Welcome to the DVD commentary.
Yeah, we always wanted to say that. I can't believe it's here. So this is the intro to our pilot, and one reason why I wanted to kind of cut this together was to add a level of substance. Even though it's a comedy show, it's like there's heart here. This isn't exactly what you thought it was. There's something different.
Yeah, and it works. It's kind of a cold open because we're watching. This is how the in canon show, in universe show would start with these credits.
Right.
If
The
you
exterior
have
that we didn't
gotten
have.
comfortable, have something to drink nearby, let's go ahead.
This
and
scene we
come
cut
into
down
the
quite a
space
bit.
and get started.
Yeah. This was our first run through of me and Elizabeth basically improving it, and we had destinations A, B, and
That
C,
is an
but we also had
acceptable
destinations
exchange
D
at
and
this
E.
point. Covering
So when
my
I cut it
butt.
together, there
Very
were these long
typical.
20-minute discussions,
A lot of
and this
times
conversation is actually a mix of all
thinking
5
about
different
what you
takes.
can do or
Okay.
what
It's not the
I
most
can do, what
efficient
I
way to
can
work
control.
if anyone's
It's
looking
not
to like
because, you know,
get
if
into
you hear me say
filmmaking,
me,
but
me,
it
me,
offers
it feels
this
a little
like
bit like a
really
little kid
natural
going, me, me,
delivery,
me, me,
and
Yeah.
we don't always choose the right
when we're
words, and we
talking about
stumble,
things
which I
like
really like.
Yeah,
addiction,
it was a
when
bit
we're
of a
talking
risk.
about
Are we going to
things
improv
like
this or
trauma,
script it
you
all
know,
out?
the
And I think
part
that
of
what we got
ourselves
was a
that
nice
is the
compromise
most
between
is that
the
little kid
two.
inside
It
of
was
us that's going,
somewhat
me,
scripted, and we got some magic moments
That's
that I
what
don't
we
think
need
would
to
have
take
shown up
most
any other
care
way.
of,
Yeah.
right?
No, totally.
So just
And
feel into
Elizabeth in
that.
real life is not that
Can you feel
cheery, and she talked to me afterwards
Get
where she's
a
like,
little
God,
bit
this
more
character's
release
exhausting.
into
You
the
know?
space.
Yeah.
Let me explain, like, she's gonna put all
So this, I think there was, like you were saying, there were several beats. We almost set up everything that happens in the show in this one scene, and it just ended up being too much. So we trimmed it down to just the essentials to get the character arc, or just the clarity of what Matt's journey is in the episode, and kind of setting up what the conflict was, and then we go back to it later, which is I think in hindsight we would have planned for that, probably put you in a different outfit and made it feel like
Okay, so
it was the
let's
next
stop.
call, but when we go back to it later in the episode, it's just kind of like a rewind of times of sorts, maybe a little bit of a continuity error, but at this level of production where we're working with basically no budget and not really enough time for rehearsals, like there really wasn't enough time or resources to do what we did. So this was a way to make it happen as best as we could, and I'm proud of what it turned into.
No, totally. And then, like, in terms of things from a technical standpoint, turning down the brightness on iPads and computer screens is a must.
Yeah.
You gotta have someone on set looking for that, because what looks good to our eyes doesn't look good to cameras.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay. So here is our fictional promo for Metro Community Media, which doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And this promo was so believable that during our first test screenings, people were like, so was that mandatory?
Yeah,
Did you have to put that in?
Like, yeah.
Stand-up comedy with Flying High Comedy.
My family doesn't like that joke. And I think perhaps it's because I told it at the funeral. I don't know.
That's just, you just need a bit. You don't need
Yeah.
like even the setup. You just need to hear the punchline and people laughing.
Yeah.
And then all of this is just from years of filming, like as if we had a real late night show, and then stitching it together to make it feel real, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the illusion of you having a long running show. Oh, and here's our first VFX shot.
We filmed a blank TV, and then we threw the promo on top of it.
So this scene, I was on one of the cameras, and just we had several different like moments where we're working with camera people of a variety of skill levels, and we learned a big lesson in what you think is the obvious choice, like other people are not really like necessarily thinking the same thing. So acting and directing is a challenge.
It is a challenge. And you and I have an interesting setup where I'm the director, but you're also like a co-director in this way, producer, where you're also looking out like, this isn't working, we need to stop. And also, there was a moment when you were just like, we are losing day, and everyone needs to stop having fun.
Yeah.
And that's like
Yeah.
the hard part with shows like this that are independently produced. People want to have fun.
That's what we're there
but
to
at
do,
a certain
is have
point, it's
fun.
like we're
Yeah.
losing light. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you. Oh, this is one of the classic bits.
Yeah, which that screen is now broken. So this is proof that we didn't break it. It was
Right,
working.
it
when
was
we filmed.
working. What I love is how disheveled I look in the room versus how clean I look on the blanket.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
think like we're playing with this idea of fame and how we like present ourselves, and I just love this idea that there's like a me behind it.
Yeah, it's very meta-ness is something that's pretty popular right now in a lot of media. But on a public access level, when you're actually in the public access world, the public access world is very meta.
Yeah. And then, yeah, just things that I would have done differently is get moving blankets up against that glass. The sound traveled in that room in a weird way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we learned was rule of thirds, and you notice that Matt's looking kind of off screen, and like, you know, just the framing between these two shots, I would have preferred for Matt to be framed in the middle, but again, it's one of those things where we had, the direction was to make that shot look natural, that he's looking towards the long part of the screen at Lisi, but then what you ended up using was more of you speaking to the crowd. So just one of those little things that after it was done, there was just no way to go back and redo it.
Right.
But those little learning lessons of clarity of direction and
Yeah. Well, and then even if I were to redo it, maybe I would even have me left, because we have Erica, the character, in the center, and that's weird when you cut back and forth and they're both in the center sometimes.
Oh, okay.
You know, but it depends.
No, that's an editing thing like that I you know I
It's
didn't
a lot.
edit
It's
it,
a lot
so
obvious
I don't
more
know what
with
it looks like.
interviews. You have to like
Oh,
separate them on the screen.
Yeah. Sometimes with film, you want to keep the viewer's eye in the same spot, but this was also just something that we came up with, just the way that your head's cut off, just those little jokes that you discover along the way.
Yeah. Well, even the blanket we like talked about the night before. We were talking about just props and stuff, and we clipped the blanket to that thing and then pulled it up, and I was like, the sound of just like. Zzz.
Yeah.
A comparison that keeps happening is just that we're like The Office, which is really strange because The Office it's a documentary.
It's
Everyone
self-aware
knows
that
the
there's a
camera's
camera
there,
in the room. Yeah.
but it actually speaks to just what a great like show The Office was and what an impact it had. That if you shoot anything in an office, people make the connection.
Yeah.
You know.
Also, we were filming, one of the stylistic choices that you made was to not shoot handheld, but actually with like a shoulder rig on a tripod. So it allows us to just get a little bit of the movement without it being too much.
Yeah. No, it's a subtle difference, but I prefer it. I love this shot too, the kind of moving down and just making more bigger choices, but not every time.
Yeah.
You know. She took a chance on me, and without her, I wouldn't have gotten
Now,
this far. So I really hope
some people have talked about the continuity, like, oh, it's, you know, the continuity's off, Matt's changing, but for me, I like the fact that it seems like these are pieces of content that have happened over a long period of time. So
Right.
those continuity people can.
Right, because it's clean shaven, then beard, and then we cut to this. And in my mind, this all happened in 2 days. How do you explain a beard that fast?
Yeah.
Although it does grow fast. This was on the way here.
Okay. And this scene we had to reshoot because the first time we did it, we were doing improv with a lot of different people, and it just I didn't really actually ever get to see that footage, but you were saying that it just wasn't usable. It just didn't work and flow as a scene because it was just too much. I was too ambitious. So when
too ambitious.
came back to it, we were much more clear about what everybody's bit was, and we shot this one with much less improv.
Yeah. No, what we've learned basically doing this as an improv show is 2 people can improv, 5 people cannot improv.
Yeah.
It's like herding cats. everyone goes everywhere. It makes everything awkward and long. So this we did write a script for, and I was proud that I was able to basically say this is unusable. And it was like, it's faster to reshoot
Yeah.
than try to clean this up.
Yeah.
And just having the humility to be like, I botched it, because I had you and Lee both as camera people and in the scene, and never leave cameras unattended.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't need like a master in filmmaking to know just have someone monitoring it.
Yeah, but we did get some good shots that made the in the world more than just one writing scene. So
Right.
those little clips of that are they're just on screen for a second, I think really round out the world. And
Well, and the benefit too was like that's just a very intense rehearsal, and we even realized that we needed to make the room bigger because the tripods were just cramping
yeah,
everything.
less people. I think there was like 3 less people in the final shot than what we had originally.
What I love too is that these are like my friends in real life as well, and people who came to the show who we became friends. So again, it's this meta thing of I love hanging out with all of these people, and just having a show or there's scenes where we all hang out is perfect.
Yeah.
And I think episode 2 we get to expand on that friendship, and
Yeah.
yeah, we're just gonna get better and better. I mean, but I'm proud. This is one of the best things I've ever made. So I did even more thinking,
And
I think if we go
good use of J and L cuts in the audio. This scene played out very linearly in the first edit, and then the things you learn. And so now we're back to that initial first scene, and this was in the opening before we get to the boardroom scene. I think it was a good choice to just go with it, even though the continuity may be a little bit different. And this is also an example. I think the shot where we're looking from the iPad, where it's framed awkwardly. I think that it works. That creates space for your the world building of your apartment. So I like that choice.
And you can't tell, but there's actually a photo of David Letterman that a relative gave me on the shelf, and I just thought it was nice. You can't tell at all because it's a Zoom call. Another choice too was, is it really a Zoom call or do we set up high res cameras? And
Yeah.
I decided with basically the pandemic, let's use real Zoom quality, because I guarantee you in about 5 years, everything's gonna look a lot cleaner.
She was
But I
also
like
in
the
Mexico at the
timestamp.
time,
Oh,
right?
yeah, she had, 2
actually
bars.
not in
Old man
Denver.
is the one who has friendships that are tied to need. That's not.
And then there's also an award
that
in that shot,
should be
because we're kind of
talking
playing
about
with the idea of accomplishment and what it means to be successful.
As new
Yeah.
Matt, am I allowed to get new underwriters that I don't have a previous?
And bringing in the music to just answer the question. I thought that was a really good choice.
Yeah.
And then the first montage.
We got some good guests coming up.
Now you filmed all the montage stuff pretty much by yourself, right? Set up the camera.
A lot of
and
it
did
was by
yeah.
myself.
I think the
And then that's the scene that got cut.
the old writer's
Yeah.
room. Yeah.
Which again became a blessing in disguise. And it kind of speaks to what a unicorn really late night is, where it's hang on to it. We might be able to still use it.
This always gets a laugh. I don't know, male nudity.
Yeah. I think also, I mean, it's funny just to include.
It's a bit unexpected. It kind of breaks from the tone. And this was that some of these shots are cut down from the original monologue sequence, which is later.
Right.
We just cut those things out, but then used them later. I helped to film that.
Oh, that
shot.
was a fun one.
These were 2 scenes that I thought.
Yeah, I think we did a great job of just getting high, low, shadows, light, casual, standing, pacing.
Yeah. It also helps that we work at this office building, so we were able to shoot this stuff around our regular work schedule.
Yeah.
And then this is our director of photography, Nick.
Nicholas
actually-
Orris, which he
yeah.
wants me to say his full name because it sounds like a dinosaur.
Nicholas Orris. Yeah. He was the colorist on this episode,
Yeah.
and we've been working with him. He's a good friend.
Sounds like business is doing good.
Oh, dude, business is always going good, man.
Again, this was a largely improvised scene. We kind of knew what we were going to go with it, but all of his lines, for the most part, he just kind of came up with
Yeah.
on the fly.
How are you?
On the fly, and We shot this like 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
We were trying to hit a deadline before, I think, January 5th. And we basically got everything together. I made those boards like 2 nights before, got the clothes, and we were just like, okay, what would feel like a hat design room? Someone who's super into like fashion. And I think like, yeah, I kind of think that as we get bigger, like budgets too, just putting him in a bigger space would have been a good idea.
You mean like a budget?
A budget?
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Our food has to go to an office to rent. But again, he also gets big laughs. We've screened this like 5 or 6 times, and we kind of walk this balance of like, I'm subtle, half the staff is subtle, but Vicky's a little bit more eccentric. Ken is eccentric, and where do we have people kind of go up, and where do we have people play down?
Yeah.
Because as you know, in the world of public access,
It's
we're
all
filled
over the
with
place.
personalities.
100%.
And filled with people who are just like, you know, working on their podcast or their news show or.
Yeah.
This time it's just a matter of getting some new perspective, and
I'll tell you what, I got the best perspective for you that you need to hear, which is that you got this. I believed in you since day one. You know this. Hell, I tune in every chance I get. Can't wait to see the new episodes. You are an important person to me, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, no production. I can't think of anything like
Perfect.
to comment on this, except that where did you get all these hats? Like,
Vintage stores.
Okay.
They have like a little. I tried thrift stores, but thrift stores are just they're too beat up. If he has a hat company, they need to be like somewhat new.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, and then our
Second
fake sign.
VFX shot, yeah, with the fake sign, which was surprisingly difficult to fade it enough to look real. And here's the real star of the show.
Yeah.
This is
Drew and Vicky.
this was a great improv scene. Like they had kind of a trajectory and what they wanted to do, but all these lines, like this, I think was just a really great example of just reacting naturally
Yes.
to.
No, if I've commended Drew in person, but if I could just say it again on recording, his ability to listen gives it that feeling of like, oh, they're not in a scene, they're really there. You know?
Yeah.
I think it is this thing.
Okay.
And then I think I hold on to
And also it works that Vicky kind of steps on the lines a little bit because
Yeah.
like she's kind of in her own world, you know?
Yeah, as a character, I think they both like showed the dynamic of how kind of functionally dysfunctional the public access world is. If you,
Right.
it's very, very authentic, and this was actually recorded live on that camera phone in the moment.
Yeah. No, there was a setting on my phone where you could do like live AR, and I just always had this scene in my mind of like putting funny filters on someone when they're having a bad day, you know?
Yeah.
And I think we got close. And you know, this is another example of just having access to the old studio kind of creates this very big world. And starting on episode 3 and up, we're going to start filming here at DCM in their studio, which again is just like, it gives us a production value that we couldn't get otherwise.
Yes. Yeah.
Like our ability to produce the show is still, I kind of want to be a part of the group.
Now this scene also was challenging to edit together because we're on camera and direction. I know that we ran through the scene a couple of times, and it was challenging to really get it to work. It's a real testament that it works as well as it does, because there was just a variety of just those small little technical issues that you just don't know until you look at the footage and you're like, oh yeah, we weren't really as clear as we should have been on the direction, but they, you know, the camera people used their best intuition, and we ended up getting what we needed, even though it wasn't necessarily what we had envisioned.
Right. And also, there was that back reflective glass there. A lot of the takes with the second camera, you could see the other camera person, and that was an instance when we should have went single camera and just kind of stayed focused. I love that turn. We kind of stepped on it a bit,
Yeah, that's
but
okay.
it's just this idea of like, let's save the gym, which is such a trope, and then you just cut. They didn't get the money in time.
Yeah.
And you know, this was actually the office of the documentary company I used to work at, and they were actually moving out that same month.
Yeah.
So all those different boxes, all those different bags, again, we took advantage of basically an opportunity and we added to the clutter. But to design that kind of clutter, it's actually very difficult to get random stuff like that. Like it naturally worked out.
Hair 5.
Yeah, hand sanitizer, please.
Hair 5.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things. That comes from reality TV where you keep the lines but show the exterior.
Yeah.
It's a great way to get out of a scene.
And some of these shots,
Hello and welcome to
like
another episode of Really Late
did we
Night
shoot all those, or are those some like actual stock footage from the old public access station?
We shot all those.
Okay.
Let's see what's in the news.
I love that massive cup of coffee I'm drinking and this reaction I give.
Work after being fired for wrongfully calling the police
And
on a black
again,
man in Central
this monologue scene, I tracked it. It took about 80 hours. From filming to editing, it took about 80 hours to produce, and it's 4 minutes long. But the graphics, it shows that they're upping their game in the world of Really Late Night,
Yeah.
and that they're like a real comedy show, even though the band is like kind of like doing its own thing. And there's also no audience in this one.
Totally.
ways that we know it is the whitest paint ever. Number 5. It was used as hair conditioner for Mike Pence.
I think this is just the funniest if Milk was a real boy.
Special guest on the reunion show. of the hit
Also,
television
this
show
sticker on this laptop, it's just after years of creating merch and adding it naturally.
Yeah.
It just creates a production design
Number
that's really
3, it
big.
opened up a yoga studio / juice bar in a neighborhood that it refers to as sketchy. Oh my God, it's like
It's kind of weird to have like this new haircut and be able to like
Number
chime
2,
in.
it's already been
Yeah,
nominated
yeah.
for an Oscar.
Yeah, he had the big old beard.
And number 1, the paint is so white that it was fired from its job after wrongfully calling the police.
Yeah,
on
I
a
mean,
black man in
when
Central Park.
the amount of
There we
time
go,
from
comes
when
back
you
all
shot like the
around.
first
I wanna thank you all
shots
for checking
in this
out another
episode
episode of
and
Really
the
Late
last
Night.
shots, what length of time was that? Like how long did actual like production on this? It was quite a while. Like
It was like a year.
a year.
It was like
yeah.
a year to
Because
the
I remember when we
day.
were doing the band stuff, that was like one of the earlier shots.
Yeah.
And then this, yeah, the storage area, again, just really grateful that we had this actual real storage area. We kind of did, all of this is our stuff, but that actual closet was really there. All of this stuff was actually in that room, so we were able to get a much higher production value.
Yeah.
Than
And then
we
mugs
could have
I've made
ever
over
afford.
time.
Yeah.
And then real costumes that I filmed sketches in that will eventually be callbacks. So really trying to stay true to the reality. And this part too of finding old bottles, I think that it's something that happens to a lot of people in recovery or people who are friends with people in recovery. There's like stories of going through someone's empty apartment and finding like bottles, which is like tragic.
Yeah.
But it's a comedy show that does have some tragic moments in it. And I'm proud of this. This is a fun one shot that we did.
With
Took us
the-
about 8 tries.
The song was cranked up. It was moving very fast, so
Yes.
that when when we're playing the slow mo, it
Right. There's a weird phenomenon when you tell people we're filming in slow-mo, people walk slower. So we found a fast-paced song and we were zipping through and then slow it down and it feels natural.
Take a few cleansing breaths together.
So this scene was a third trip back to
This time
the
another
therapist,
big hug
and
from
you
out
and Nick
your
were like, this
mouth.
doesn't make any sense, man.
yeah.
And I was
yeah.
like, well, it's supposed to in my mind. And we ended up taking just the audio, and the audio is actually more powerful
yeah.
this way.
Well, we've talked about some of the positives from this week, but let's talk about some of the challenges. So what were some of the challenges this week?
So I know you had envisioned a shot where we pour alcohol down or like a tube and kind of get the reverse of that, but I think this is just as
Yeah.
powerful. And then the song choice too, being that it's a cover of the original opening theme song,
Right.
like just a lot higher tempo and
Right,
and
right.
just like a more like celebratory vibe of it.
Yeah, which, and people have been so like invested in the story, they rarely make the connection that the first song is the same as the second song.
Okay, stop.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Daniel, I'm confused.
And this is also was a scene that was it originally a post-credit scene, or it was much longer?
It was originally in the opening, and we were like, let's pull this away.
Yeah.
So there's a big payoff on here.
And
So-
you produced the whole actual advertisement, and
Oh yeah, so we ended up filming that right before we filmed that scene. So we set up in another room, white background Daniel, and then we went to there. I exported it, shot this.
And in the spring of 2020,
and
we'll
then
be opening our brand new
as you
location.
went, you added
We're
in
also
some of the
shortening our
other
name.
B-roll,
Colorado
which
Video
I think really
will now
punched
be
it
known
up
as
with the
COVID.
the big
And
the
that
big
works.
laugh.
Cutting to
Yeah.
him being disappointed is what sells it. You
Yeah.
know?
Come to
Yeah.
our
And also, I just love COVID.com.
One of those jokes that only I think this show could do. We're in Colorado, so Colorado Video just feels natural. I love that
Just
shot.
like a
grandma
foot
and
away.
yeah.
And enough time passed that was funny to laugh at.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it oddly has kept up. And the one feedback people go like, damn, that's a good joke, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now
And we
gotta
came
top
up with
it.
that just being in the office, joking and writing. And
Yeah.
that's the important part, I think, of having a creative team is just those moments when you're together. You
Yeah.
come up with stuff together.
Yeah.
And then also everyone in the Patreon and the
Yeah,
Ko-fi
thank you
that-
everybody on that Patreon
Yeah,
list.
and
Thank
the
you
whole
for making
cast
it
and crew.
possible.
I mean, it truly is like a group effort to have made this even possible, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Great job, Matt.
Great job for you, Jesse. Congratulations.